In this video, I wanted to have a discussion on a foundational part of shooting, whether it's a rifle, pistol, shotgun, muzzleloader, whatever, and that's the grip. So the grip is, as I described it, it's foundational to being able to operate a firearm. Now, in the past, I have described your relationship with the firearm being your ability to interact with that firearm is going to dictate your ability with that firearm. So your ability to handle this tool properly, and well, maybe properly is kind of subjective to the situation, but being able to handle that tool in a manner that is conducive to better control under different situations is really going to impact your effectiveness with that tool. So I have here a Canic TP9DA, so haven't pulled this thing out in a while, but anyways, grip for a pistol is one of those things that really can dictate, it can make or break your ability to control the pistol and even, do more, I don't want to say advanced stuff, but more higher level things or higher task things, such as going from target to target quickly and being able to pull the trigger without moving the gun. So if you have a good grip in whatever situation it may be, whether it's one-handed, two-handed, whatever, maybe support hand-only shooting, even if it's support hand-only shooting, that grip is actually going to be foundational to you being able to pull that trigger without moving the gun. So the way that I see grip from my experience, now I'm not going to pull this out of some NRA instructor book or out of any instructor's mouth. My goal in this video is to tell you in my words from my experiences how I would describe this from my time behind the gun, because everybody has their own description of things. So the way I see it, we're dealing with things like in martial arts, we're dealing with positions and pressures. So when it comes to grip, I see it as position being a very big deal. You need to be set up in a position where you have the maximum control over it. Now, some people talk about, oh, well, the higher you are to the bore axis or the closer you are to the axis of the bore, scientifically that's better. I've shot guns that are have bore axes that would make you grip down here, and they're way up here, and they control themselves a lot better. And I've said in previous videos, I don't care if the gun does 360-degree flip or whatever, as long as it gets back on target well. And a lot of those high bore axis guns do that very well. The leverage actually seems to help it snap itself back on target from the weight of the slide, particularly higher caliber pistols. So anyways, I think that's a kind of ridiculous, so I'm not going to default to that. But what I am going to say is use up as much of the grip as you can that's available. Now, when it comes to things that are like USPs and SIG 226s, Beretta 92s, stuff that has a higher bore axis, the same thing applies to a Glock or, this Canic or whatever, an M&P. You want to get as high as possible. You want to position yourself to give yourself the most advantage to where you're controlling it as much as possible. So you want as little extra room as possible between your hand and the firearm. You want to take up as much room as possible. You want to be greedy. And that's what I've found is I want to get a greedy grip. I want to grab as much of it as I can. And so high up on the back of the grip, up on the beaver tail area here, I want it as tight as possible, and I go as high as possible under here to where I am actually shoving my callus here, my knuckle. It's built up a callus from me gripping, and I would say that's typically an indicator of a shooter, somebody who shoots a lot, practices a lot, and they'll typically have calluses like that. And then you're making sure that it's aligned with, your forearm. And all that's really doing is making sure that you got an even grip, that your knuckle, you got your thumb knuckle on this side and you've got your other finger knuckles on this side. I've seen some people that shoot like this where their knuckle is right behind the grip, and they have a very painful experience at the range. And sometimes they'll say, well, it's because I have small fingers or whatever. That's not really a good excuse. I would say that maybe there's a little too much gun for you, if that's the case. There are some guns that are a little too much gun for me, and I accept that. That's fine. So I'm not going to force myself on it just because I want to be part of the cool crowd, you know? So anyways, as far as position is concerned for one-handed shooting, that's it. It's really that simple. There's nothing too complicated about it. It's position. Now, when it comes to pressure, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, because if you look at things, pressure and leverage and position are pretty much all going to play the same part. Position is going to allow you, the position you have on the pistol is going to allow you better control, but pressure in the proper position, proper pressure in the proper position is going to allow you better control. So you apply certain pressures in here. My ring and pinky finger would be applying more pressure than my middle finger. And there's a couple reasons to this. Number one, leverage. So when this thing goes back, it is going to go back. We are obsessed with control, right? We're human beings, we're obsessed with control. So in that sense, we like to prevent it from flipping up. Well, what can we prevent? Well, we can try to lock our wrist, but we're still going to have some movement that is uncontrollable. So what can we do? Well, we can grip here at the lowest point as hard as possible. And that's eliminating one thing. One of the things that a lot of people do is when they go to pull the trigger, they have the last minute jolt. What that actually is pinky finger and ring finger engagement. That's called sympathetic movement, because how do we grip things in nature and how do we apply force in a crush? We do this, right? We're not used to doing this. We're used to using all fingers in order to get that complemented, a collective force from all of our fingers. And, even the Yakuza still do self-sacrificial, like, pinky amputations or whatever to take away their strength finger. The pinky is very strong. It along with all the other hands, is very important to that. So, not saying that the pinky is capable of arm wrestling in and of itself, but it plays a huge role in the tendons that it has and all the other muscles that it activates and stuff like that in order to provide a good grip. And so we want to utilize that. So pressures in order to apply leverage. And it's almost passive leverage, right? But because we want to maintain this grip, we want to hold a good position, and we want to apply pressure in those positions so we actually have leverage at the right time. So same as we talked about before with the one-handed grip, when you go two-handed, you want to get a good position. And the position is, again, greedy. You want to take up as much of this space as possible. You want to fill in as much of this as possible. And that's why the biggest thing for people to see, a good instructor will tell you to fill in all this area first and then just put your fingers around it. And the way that you're actually gripping is just like this. You're just applying a smashing grip, basically squeezing it with your palms and, with these fingers, rather than, really crushing it with these fingers. These fingers, they are going to come into play, but probably not as much as you think. So you apply palm pressure and see how my fingers are aligned here on the sides. My thumb is out a little bit more than my trigger finger, but that's okay. But I'm filling in all this space, and then I'm wrapping my fingers around, not forcefully, but then I press out. And now what I'm doing here when I have my position, now I'm applying pressure. I'm applying pressure inward with my palms, so I'm actually trying to crush the grip of the pistol inwards. I'm wanting to crush these sides inwards. Theoretically, that's not really my goal, but you get the point. That's where the pressure is focused. And of course I have my pinky and ring finger applying pressure as well. So from here, what I'm doing is I'm just holding these fingers firm in position and not letting them move, and I'm applying a push, and I'm keeping this one stationary. I'm using this as my blocker. I don't want my pistol going out further than this, so I'm not going to allow it to push out like this. This is going to be my stopper hand. My support hand is a support hand. So it's to support that proper extension. That's the way I like to think of it. So I've got a push hand, really aggressive, wants to get back in the fight. This is the sergeant major or first sergeant that holds everything together, or gunny for us Marines. And then of course we pull the trigger without moving the gun. And that's all the secrets to the grip from my point of view. I know it took 10 minutes, but the way I see it is everybody's got their own way of explaining things, and I just wanted to explain all my lessons from shooting and the way I see the grip and how I break it down. It's a variable of positions, proper pressures applied in the proper positions, and having that leverage. And a lot of that leverage that we're trying to apply to counter recoil is passive. A lot of the things that you're going to do to control the recoil is really going to be reflexive in nature. We don't like when something goes out of our control, so what do we try to do? We try to flinch it back on, and sometimes we interrupt. Or not interrupt, but we change up that cycle, right? We control the recoil before there's even recoil, and that's where a lot of that, throwing the shot down actually comes from. And part of that is not applying pressure and to have that passive leverage, because we always have that leverage on standby, right? So once the shot breaks, we use those fingers to pull it back to where it was supposed to be, right? So anyways, you can see where that's actually not being applied. Like if you watch like Victor's Tactical or Vickers Tactical, I think I said Victor, but Vickers Tactical, you'll see him shoot and he just lets the pistol come up and then he eases it back down. He's not really applying much leverage in much of any way. He's going for accuracy over, he's making sacrifices to get accuracy rather than having a blend of accuracy and speed. So, I mean, that's fine, but you actually do see that in the slow-mo. It'll actually just settle in this position instead of being, ready to fire, boom. And then instead of going back on, he actually just hangs out here. And then they switch to him shooting multiple shots. But if you actually see him shooting multiple shots, you'll actually see articulations in the wrist. And that's him bringing it back on. But it's just very interesting thinking about the science and anatomy of how these things are working. But anyways, hope this was an interesting video for you. Hope you guys enjoyed watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and you guys have a good one.